You've got everything in life: wonderful career, huge salary, beautiful house, married, child, and a posh car on top of that. Then you realize you're not happy. Everything falls apart. You end your marriage. And then after that, you're diagnosed twice with cancer. This is the story of Alex Darby. Come on this journey to find out how she recovered and discovered a new meaning to her life.
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to the Share.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. Now today, as our special guest, we have Alex Darby. Now Alex promotes that self-belief and self-worth makes a person capable of anything. She lost her mum to cancer at 16, put herself through school and university while working 3 jobs, but happy marriage, successful career, wonderful house was all a facade. Divorce and a mountain of debt took its toll, and then a breast cancer diagnosis. Through this, Alex found a key to revolutionize her life, founded in her relationship with herself, her body, her finances, and her future. Welcome, Alex.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Would you like to just start with a little bit of your background and the challenges that you've faced that led you to do what you're doing now?
Sure. So, how far back do you want me to go? I could really go far, I could go really, really far back.
Well, in looking at the history, because your mum died at a young age, that must have been very traumatic for you.
So my mum died of breast cancer when I was 15. She was 49, so really, really young. She was actually a best-selling author herself.
Oh, wow.
And she kind of died in the prime of her life, and it was all wrong on every level. But of course, just with that kind of lifestyle and that kind of my family dissipated, lost it completely, and I ended up living on my own at 16. And I think that I went into a kind of self-protection overdrive and thought, I've just got to get educated, and I've got to do my exams. And I got on the bus to school every day, came home, did my own food, managed to work part-time in a shop, a very classic UK shop called Argos at the time. And I used to work nights, with the night shift to get myself through school, did my exams, got to university, and then went straight into a job, and actually didn't really stop for about 30 years, because work was the only thing that I felt was a protection. And that's all I did. It was I worked. It was my kind of way of being in a cocoon. And so because I was so head down and working, I didn't really care about, I felt abandoned, I felt lost, I felt lonely, but my job filled all those gaps. And I was really good at it as well. I was really, really, really good at it, and I was really successful. Right. And of course, you get to an age where I never wanted kids because my mum had died when I was 15, and I never wanted to do that to anyone else. So I vowed never to have children. And then until one day when I was 35, I woke up and I thought, oh my God, I've got to have a baby. And it was like a moment of, where has this come from? I was married, but not
Yeah.
very happily married,
Yeah.
but didn't quite know what happily married meant.
Yeah.
So, I'd got married in Vegas in a black dress,
Oh,
that
wow.
that kind of marriage. But I desperately wanted to have a baby, and it felt like the most right thing I had to do.
Right.
But because I programmed my body to not get pregnant for a
Yeah.
really, really long time, I couldn't do it. So I ended up having IVF.
Oh, wow.
And which was so in England it's called IVF. I have no idea what it's called, different things across the world.
Here.
Yeah.
We're part of the
And I was given,
Commonwealth.
yeah. I was so I was given a 15% chance of it ever working, given my age. But that 15% chance turns 15 next year. So it worked.
Okay.
And my life kind of took it. That was the first glimpse of what I do now, of why I do what I do now, was that process of me creating my daughter.
Yes.
Which we'll come on to in a bit. But so that was 37 when I had her. And then within maybe 3 years, my picket fence house and wonderful job and baby daughter and flash car on the drive and husband just was all one big lie.
Right.
It was just all, I just was so unhappy. I was up to my eyeballs in debt to deal with a difficult marriage and sort of things that you do when you try to hide. And I was just felt like spending money on stuff made me happier than anybody else did.
Yeah.
And then he was a troubled guy. I ended up leaving him. We ended up separating when my daughter was 3.
Right.
And then I had a determination to not ask for a penny from him. So I wanted to pay him out of our house to keep our home.
Yeah.
I wanted to give him the money. I wanted him to go.
Yes.
I could still see his daughter, but I didn't want any money from him. I never wanted a money conversation with him ever.
Yeah.
So it just created more debt and more pressure for me, which then I think perhaps resulted in me getting breast cancer, which is what happened 3 months after our separation. And that's kind of my story.
Wow.
Up to the point of having breast cancer, and then obviously everything changed.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Do you mind if we come back a bit? Because you talked about your mum, and your mum was quite accomplished best-selling author, and she died. Was it when you were 16? She died, or was it 15? 15.
15.
15. So you've had a bit of time with your mother. What kind of influences did she have, or how did she impact your life before she parted? While she was alive, what were the key impacts for you?
Good question, actually. She instilled in me a belief that you become self-sufficient.
Right.
That be self-sufficient. Don't ever rely on other people, because I think she'd been let down probably herself in the past. And her overriding sense was, you be you and be you in all your glory and be as unique as you can be. And she used to pull me up on words. So if I ever said, that's nice, she'd, no, Alex, that word is boring. You find a better word. Or if I'd say to her that, could you get me that green skirt? She'd say, green? What do you mean green? Be more descriptive. And she taught me to be very descriptive. So what kind of green? What do you mean green? Is it olive green? Is it grass green? Is it painted green? Is it light green, dark green? She used to be really, that was her. She taught me actually to be creative.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I love that. I just wrote down here, you be you in all your glory. That's awesome. Coming from your mum, that's fantastic. You mentioned, that she was also, your mum was let down, because you haven't mentioned your dad. Was there?
So my dad was, my mum was married before my dad, and she had my two sisters. So she was really badly let down by her first husband. But my mum was a bit of a revolutionary in her own time. So when she was 18, which will have been, she was born in 1935. So in the sort of very when women don't really go and do their own thing, she ran off to Paris and lived in Paris and taught retired businessmen English.
Oh wow!
And she had a she had a spark of adventure and wanted to live a life, really live a life. She was lived in full colour. She was amazing, actually. But my dad equally, she met my dad, had me, they were very happy married. But my dad was a bit of a revolutionary in his own time as well. He was a bit ahead of his time in terms of, he taught me things like always dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. So he was always telling me to be more than I was at the moment. And that's kind of how I grew up.
Yeah, wow. And I love that because I can relate to that. My mum was, post World War II in Australia. She moved to another state to become a motor mechanic, and she was the first female apprentice motor mechanic in Australia outside of what was in World War II. So I think we
Wow,
can
yeah,
relate
that's
to
amazing,
it.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, my mum, when she came back to the UK, she was the first woman to open a nightclub in the city where we lived.
Oh,
And she
wow.
ran the nightclub. And I didn't know that. It's a weird thing about this. I didn't know that at all until I started running nightclubs when I was in my late 20s.
Yeah.
And my dad said to me, "Do you know that your mum used to do this as well?" No, I had no idea. So so we both, we both did the same thing.
So you went into the business where you were running a nightclub, but your mum had opened a nightclub and run.
Yeah, she'd opened that. So when I started working, when I finished my degree, I got the first job that I was offered, basically, and it was in the hospitality industry. So I started off as a graduate trainee in running nightclub venues.
Yeah.
And my dad was over the moon because he said, whatever happens in the world, people always want to go for a drink. So you'll always be all right. So I sort of really believed I sort of made it in this industry. And actually I was in that industry for 20 years.
Yeah.
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I worked my way up and sort of became very senior by the time I left, but I loved it. It was very good.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, because your mum was obviously, it sounds like you're very close with your mum as well, like growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think that loss when your mum died was part of, you mentioned going into a self-protection overdrive. Was it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what was that like? I mean, that must have been difficult, really difficult.
It was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. I was a protected 15-year-old. I had an amazing childhood. I didn't want for anything. My mum was famous.
Yeah.
I may not have seen her very much because she worked so much, but I knew she worked from home. She was always in the house. I knew she was always there. If I wanted to go for a quick cuddle, I could do.
Yeah.
She was one hell of a woman, really.
Yeah.
So when she died, when she was dying, my dad, who was emotionally, well, he didn't know how to express his emotions at all. He really struggled with any kind of emotion. So when he told me that she was ill, I'd got off the school bus, got into his car, and I was literally sat in the passenger seat of his car, and he just said, not looking at me, just looking straight forward, he went, "Alex, your mum's going to die." And that was it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
She's got about 3 months to live, and that was it. And I was sat in the car thinking, is this a joke? Is this some weird, what's going on here? He took me home, took me to the hospital, and it was awful. They had to sedate me in hospital because I was so upset, and Mum was really traumatized. And then in the middle of the night, I got up and I ran. I left our house and ran through the woods to our, towards the hospital, and got to the hospital and banged on the door to let me in, and they let me stay there overnight. But yeah, it sort of happened really quickly.
Yeah.
1 minute she was there, next minute she was gone, and it was horrible because what happened afterwards was dreadful. My family just dispersed. They just couldn't cope. My dad absolutely lost his mind. He blamed me for her death in the middle of the night, every night for about a week, saying if I hadn't been born, she'd still be alive.
Oh, wow.
His weird way of coping with it was like really difficult for me as a 15-year-old. Watching my dad blame me for the loss of my own mother is really hard. But for somehow I managed to rationalise that as being his grief, and I know that he didn't actually mean it. And I managed to maintain a relationship with my dad up to the day he died, and he died just after my daughter was born, so years later. But it was awful. It was the destruction of a family. and it was just over. But one minute we were a happy family, next minute it was just all gone.
Yeah, because I was wondering as you were talking about that, and you mentioned you got in the car and your dad's looked straight forward, and then you take that through to the destruction of the family, and it sounds like your mum was the centerpiece holding everything together.
Yeah,
and
completely.
like from your dad's perspective, do you think, because I'm just wondering, as you were saying before I got the rest of the story, when you said he just looked forward, that he wasn't able to cope with that as well? Is that, do you think?
He didn't cope. He couldn't cope. My mum was the love of his life.
Yeah.
He'd never had any other relationship apart from with her. Never been
Oh,
married
really?
before.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was in the Navy before they met, and he had his own business, and he was just absolutely head over heels in love with her. He was just, and he didn't handle it very well at all in any way. I mean, and that's why I say I found a way to actually rationalize what was going on, because I kind of got it. I think
Yeah.
that he'd lost somebody he was never going to be able to replace. He tried. He got married quite a few times afterwards, but it didn't quite work.
Yeah. Well, it was just interesting because the way you talked about it as well, even when you said that, your dad, said to you and blamed you for the loss of the mum, but listening to you talk, it sounds like you're kind of at peace with his rationale, that he wasn't actually, it sounds like he wasn't really upset with you. He just didn't really know how to deal with that.
No, I think it's really classic of anybody going through any trauma. And since doing what I do now, I see it all the time. And I think now I can completely see what happens. And I think he was going through that phase of denial and anger all at the same time.
Yeah.
And he needed to be able to pin it on something to make himself calm down. And it was just in his logic, he was a very, 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 very logical man. Yeah. His logical brain, he probably thought she was too old when she had her. It's clearly something to do with that. Therefore, it all makes sense. And that's it. And he loved me, and I don't believe for a second that he meant it.
Yeah, I can hear that in your voice, and it's, I mean, it's a horrible thing. I can't imagine what that would be like as a teenager to go through that. But it really sounds like, from your perspective, you're really at peace with that, and you had a really deep love with both your parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then from there, as you say, your mum has died. Obviously, your dad's going through he's going through, and you've then become completely independent. It's because, as you said, you went into self-protection overdrive. So I can imagine, as a teenager, you've got your dad going through what he's going through, so you can't turn to him for strength, I would imagine.
No.
And so it sounds like you looked inwards. Was that a conscious thing that you did, or was that just something that was instilled from when your mum was there?
I think it was just something that it was almost like I've been prepared for it.
Yeah.
Like looking back, it's sort of thing. It's almost like my mum had been drilling in self-sufficient. So I just went into self-sufficiency and just got on with it, actually. I mean, it is the most bizarre thing, because I left our wonderful house, rented a house, a tiny little house, and didn't know how to turn the hot water on. And it was the most distressing thing in the world. At that moment, I couldn't work out how to turn the hot water on. And then I really remember crying by the sink where I wanted to wash my hair. There was no hot water. And then thinking, okay, there's no hot water. Just work it out. Just boil a kettle. Just do something. And there was that moment where I just kicked into, okay, this is what we're doing now then. And I just got on with it and got a job. Worked really hard, got my exams, carried on, and went to college and university, and just carried on.
Yeah. So from college, I mean, from high school, you went to college because you went to Birmingham University, and you studied, was it organizational management? Is that correct?
I did a business degree, and then I did a master's degree in leadership and strategy.
Yeah.
Later on, I did that through work.
So, I mean, that's not a common path that people would take. What was the driver to study that?
Well, I really wanted to do art. I got into art school, and I was so happy being the very creative person that I believed I was. I got into art school, and my dad said to me, "That's crazy, Alex. What on earth are you thinking? You'll get nothing from art school. You've got to do business." So I just thought, Right, okay. And so I just swapped degrees and went straight into business and carried on doing business for 30 years.
Yeah.
Madness.
Well,
But yeah, so I loved it. I absolutely loved it though. I really enjoyed it.
so the art side of things, was that a natural thing that you had done when you were younger as well? Because I mean, your mum was a writer,
Yes,
so that's
yeah.
quite
My mum was a
artistic.
writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was living on my own and working a million jobs, I also made wall hangings and sold them in a local shop.
Oh, really?
So I used to make my own stuff, and I used to make all my own clothes,
Yeah.
everything. So, and my dad bought me a sewing machine,
Yeah.
and it was the best thing he'd ever bought me. And I just made all my own clothes, and I sold stuff in the local crafty shops and things to
Yeah.
help. Um,
So what type of wall hangings were they? Like paintings, or what
They
type of?
were actually, I don't really know why anyone bought them if I look back now, because they were actually just bits of material that I'd found that I'd loved in markets.
Yeah.
And I put them together in a kind of collagey way on a backdrop, and then put two pieces of wood either side. And they were really big. And they
Yeah.
just looked a little static from a distance, so that's probably why. But they used to sell really well. I don't think they would do now, actually, but back then when I was 18.
Yeah, well, I mean, you seem, looking at I mean, your website and a few other things that I've looked at, you seem to have a very, very creative I mean, you say, sassy, and you're, very sassy, very classy in what you put together. You seem just to have a natural eye, and is that something that you've always had?
Well, thank you for saying that. It means a lot. But yeah, I think I probably have without knowing it. It's sort of been drummed out of me quite a lot. There's sort of key people in my career who've told me I'm not creative, and I've believed them. But
Right.
now I look back and think they've told me that because they were probably a little bit threatened about my creativity. Therefore, that's probably where it was all coming from. But yeah, I have always had that kind of, I'd like to do it differently. I don't want to be like everybody else. I'd like to be. I remember my mum told me to be me. So I've
In all your
always
glory.
I followed the instruction.
She sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's nice that you've got that wonderful memory of your mum as well. But looking at, and so, with your, from that perspective, you've gone to university, and then your dad has said follow business, and so you've done that. And it sounds like whatever you turn your mind to, you're going to do to the nth degree, and do exceptionally well. Is that, from that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got this. I can't not do it like that. I can't do it half-heartedly. I don't know how to. So
Yeah.
I have to. So I have to. Not. I am very competitive, but not in a competitive to other people. I'm competitive against myself,
Yeah.
and it's more be better than yesterday. Be better than yesterday. And if you're going to do this, then why don't you absolutely do it, not just half-heartedly do it? And that's how I kind of operate.
Do you think that competitiveness that you talk about, competitive with yourself, do you think that came about from the teachings of your mum, or because of when your mum passed on and then you felt alone, so you felt you needed to push yourself?
Well, I think it's probably a combination of wanting approval from my dad, and my dad was very competitive, and my
Right.
dad had a certain way of telling you when he wasn't overly impressed with you, and he used to crush me, and so I didn't want those conversations. So I think I would want to better myself because that was sort of living up to my mum's standards, and
Mm.
I always kind of reflect on what advice she'd be giving me
Yeah.
now if I was in certain situations. But
Okay.
my dad was competitive, and my dad I used to want him to be proud of me, and whether it ever actually was. And
Yeah.
that's not in I want you to be proud of me, Dad, and I'll do anything for that. I just actually wanted him to one day say, you know what, Alex, good job. That was it.
You're not I don't think you're the first person to be driven by that, by their parents, and wanting that, good job, and keep
Yeah,
pushing harder. But
yeah.
I noticed you say you reflect on what your mum had said, because that's a common theme that's in a lot of, well, certainly in a lot of literature. If Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talks about building, your mastermind, and that can be people that have passed on that you can talk to. Do you actually have those kind of conversations as though,
All
with your
the
mum?
time.
Yeah.
All the time. I
Yeah.
write to her. I talk to her. I go and all the time. She's my go-to. person to get advice from, and how I get the advice I don't know, but I always get it. So I just try and picture what she would be doing and what she would do about that certain situation. And I do the same with my dad as well, actually. I often try and think about what he would say, and it always helps.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think it'd be interesting for the listeners to hear that as well, from that perspective of, you know, putting it out there. And you've obviously had some very strong connections with your parents before they passed on, and then still at being able to have that or ask those questions, and it sounds like you're trusting that they're going to give you the answer. Is that right?
Yeah. So for a really, really, really long time, I shut them out of my life.
Yeah.
A really long time. I decided that they had abandoned me and it wasn't on, and off you go. They are no longer, they are dead to, literally they are dead to me.
Yeah.
And I kind of,
I'm an adult now. I can do it myself.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm all good. Thank you. I can do this. So yeah. And I really did close the door on them. And it was actually my husband who said to me, we were running the New York Marathon in 2018 to celebrate me being 5 years free of breast cancer. And he said to me, what would your parents do about this? And would they join us for dinner in New York? I said, Alistair, you do know they're dead, don't you? He went, yes. So, absolutely. But do you think they could join us in New York for dinner? Because I really think you need to see them again. Yeah. And that was 4 or 5 years ago. And I did. I let them back in and sort of apologised for pushing them out. And actually, it's been a lot. I feel more whole because of it, and I'm able to reconnect with my mum and my dad in different ways, and I can ask them questions. I get the answers in dreams, in feelings, in ideas, in thoughts, in memories that come back that make me think, I know what to do about that. And that's how it works.
So do you think it was, and we'll come to, because you described that you found that man, which is, you know, sounds like he knows what you need at the right times, but we'll come to that later. But do you think that was, you know, the relationship you've reestablished with your parents, for yourself, do you think that was your forgiveness of them or your forgiveness of yourself, or both?
Or both, actually, because it's all tied together, isn't it? Because I needed to forgive them for leaving me. Because my mum, especially, my dad, not so much. But my dad died when he was 73, and actually, we kind of, you know, we were all right. We were fine. He died too young, but actually, he lived a very rich life, and he, you know, he liked his whiskey and good food, and I think that he'd made his peace and he was fine. My mum, though, I felt really angry for a really long time that she'd gone. And I felt really sort of frustrated that she hadn't taken the responsibility of her own body and she let cancer kill her. And that's a really extreme thing to say, but that's kind of, as I was growing up, that's how I was feeling. And then especially when I got diagnosed with cancer, it was a bit like, oh, okay, this is how it feels, is it, when you've got children? I didn't mean to say that, Mum. It was a bit like, oh, okay, I get this. But yes, it's forgiving me for it's forgiving my self-forgiveness for shutting them out, and then forgiving them for not being around.
Yeah. That's interesting that you talk about, because I don't, you know, I don't relate. My grandparents have passed on, but my parents are still around, so I don't relate. I can't understand that experience, is what I'm saying. And I'm just wondering what it is that, you know, from your perspective, that drove you to feel that way, that, you know, because, I mean, I'm guessing your mum, if she had a choice, she wouldn't have died.
Of course.
And so what do you think it is that actually, you know, caused you to blame your mum for her passing on?
I think you go through phases of grief, which some of it can get stuck and some of it can be stuck for years. And I think I got stuck in the anger phase of you've gone, I need you, you're not here. What am I supposed to do now? Kind of attitude, which is very victim-like and not a good look. I'll tell you that now. And it sort of creates behaviour that is very destructive. And that's what my life was like for a really long time. I sort of had a death wish hanging over my head. I was very destructive. I was very bolshy and very live life to the fullest of both ends kind of thing. And I think I was just sort of almost waiting for it to happen to me, but weirdly, because of the family connection. But then I don't really know. It wasn't my mum's fault for dying, and I don't blame her at all in any way. And it was tragic. And I think that she would be horrified if she knew how I felt. I'm sure she does know how I feel, actually. But she'd be horrified. She'd be horrified, but probably understanding of. Yeah, I get it. This was not in the plan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think she'd probably, by the sounds of it, your mum would be very understanding that you were,
Yeah.
of how you were feeling. She just sounds like this amazing woman that you're very blessed to have the time that you did.
Absolutely, and that's now how I see it. That I got 15 years, and I got 15 years of a very special relationship, and that's actually more than a lot of people get. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, and just, I mean, like you say, she was this amazing woman that she was ahead of her time, and inspired you to actually move that forward as well. It's such a wonderful connection. It sounds like you've got.
Yeah.
So you've gone through, you've done organizational study, and then you've been working flat out career wise. And I noticed when you went through your I'll call it awakening after you had breast cancer, you wrote that you spent a lot of time defining it is what you wanted, like from a relationship perspective and a number of things you wanted. Before that happened, had you thought about what your life was to be like, or was it just charging forward, or how did that work?
It was charging forward. I was like a racehorse at full pelts that never looks behind. I just was go and never stopped, and just took opportunities as they came, and just did more. I was just very driven, and on the surface I was very driven. I was a very confident, driven woman who was very successful on the surface. Underneath, I was a lonely, unhappy woman who was trying to find something to hold on to that was working. That's what was going on.
Right. I mean, that's quite a juxtaposition to have that. How did you balance that?
Well, I didn't.
You must have done for some period of time. It sounds like.
Well, I did. It's very difficult, isn't it? Because to find happiness, you do more. So the whole, do I have this? Do I have this thing? This is what's going to make me happy, or do I find out what's going to make me happy and feel that happiness first? And I was doing the first, I wasn't doing the second. So I was finding things to attach my happiness to, whether it be a promotion that I was going for, therefore I'll be happy when I get it, or it'll be a baby that I really want to have, I'll be happy when I have her, or it'll be a house I'm going to buy, I'll be happy when I get that house. I was always striving for that next thing, and none of it made me happy at all. In fact, the opposite. It made me more unhappy every single time, because the realization that this big thing I was looking forward to, and I'd put everything in, I'm going to get this promotion, it's going to be amazing, and I'm going to earn all this money, I'm going to do this amazing job, I'm going to be really happy. And I get the job, I get the money, and I'm even unhappier. Like, how does that work?
So what was that? Yeah, I was going to say, so you've got this, you've worked really hard, and the striving is something, I've read a lot about, where we have this striving, we're looking outside for that happiness.
Yeah.
And so you're pushing really hard. I mean, what gave you the motivation to keep coming back? I mean, because you said you've rattled off a couple of things there, like promotion, the house, the baby, and I'm sure there was a whole bunch of other things that were on the list.
Loads. Absolutely. There's whatever. Because I did it, because if I stopped, my inner demons would come out fighting, and I couldn't cope with them. So I had to keep moving. Otherwise, I couldn't deal with the stuff that was the grief that was still there, the anger, the sort of shame about how I felt about my mum and sort of my dad, and the money I'd spent just to try and feel happiness, which felt very selfish, and all of it. The loneliness and the shame and the anger was so big and so loud that I had to quieten it down by constantly moving.
Yeah, so that's what I heard there. So when you think about it now, was it you were searching for happiness, or you were trying to hide the demons?
Well, trying to hide the demons, because that's what will bring me happiness.
So but what you were hiding the demon. You didn't want to face the demons, so you were pushing forward and thinking, well, if I keep pushing forward, that's going to hide the demons, and I'll eventually be happy at some point because I'll be able to outrun.
Exactly. I'll outrun them. Yeah, absolutely. I'll outrun. It was literally like, I will outrun you. You have got not a patch on me. Off you go. But then they kept on catching up, which is a problem.
Because I'm going to be all the glory of me, and you can't catch me. Is that?
Yeah.
Do you think that's what led to you wanting to run a marathon? Just to say, yep, I've outrun you?
No. Actually, that's not that. Actually, that's something completely different, which is a lovely, more of a normal, very happy story. Because that came afterwards. But this was before I'd got ill. Because when I got ill and I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I'd had because I've got a family history link with breast cancer. I was part of a family history clinic. And I used to go and have yearly mammograms, and I'd had my yearly mammogram in the September, and I'd got recalled for they found something that didn't look quite right. Went back, got the absolute, you're fine, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Then me and my husband broke up a month later.
Yeah.
And then 2 months later, I found a lump and got diagnosed. Then the first time. So I was diagnosed actually on my dad's birthday in January 2nd. I know, yeah. You think that'd be a good omen, wouldn't you? But I'm sure that was him laughing from somewhere, saying, "I told you, Alex."
Slow down.
Yeah. So I got diagnosed the first time and refused to accept it. And I wouldn't stop. And I didn't stop. I carried on working. I refused to have chemotherapy because I didn't feel like it felt all wrong. Something about it just felt all wrong. My daughter was 4. I was just newly separated. Yeah, I was having this really bizarre, intuitive experience.
Yeah.
And I still can't really explain why. I mean, all I did was when I was diagnosed, I sort of overnight sort of started to juice. I just lived on raw juice. Yeah. And I did a load of sort of calming down to try and when it was the first time that I'd actually calmed down enough for my intuition to kick in. And something about it was just don't have chemo. So I did this whole so I had this whole experience with my oncologists of stats and life expectancy and all this kind of thing. I did it all on my own. I made all the decisions on my own and sat with him and said, "Please help me, but I can't do this and I don't know why." So they decided to give me radiotherapy to start with, just as just do something because you've got to do something. Yeah. So I did, and I worked all the way through the radiotherapy. Never told my daughter I was ill because she was only 4. I just made out everything was completely normal. And then my radiotherapy was a 6-week program, and on the last week I fell awkwardly in a home and landed on my other breast and found another lump the last week for my radiotherapy. And so the day I finished my radiotherapy on one day in the morning in one hospital, in the afternoon went to another hospital and had my lump removed and told it was cancer. And at that point I thought, my number's up. I have pushed this too far. And whatever I was thinking about, whatever stupid intuitive idea I was having, what was I thinking? So I went into see my consultant with my head down thinking, this is it. And he actually congratulated me and said, "Thank God you had that instinct, because if you hadn't have done and you had have had chemotherapy, that lump probably wouldn't have gone and it may have probably killed you in the future. So well done. We don't know how you've done it, but you need to have chemotherapy." And they chucked the book at me and gave me everything. So for 2 years I was off. I was dealing with it all.
So if I understand correctly, you were diagnosed twice, which I read in your background. So the first time you were diagnosed was you went through and said, I'm doing this my way. And you just and you actually got rid of the cancer, was that right? Or
so it was removed. Yeah, it was removed, and then I had radiotherapy, but I never got as far as having it's all gone now, because I found another lump in my other breast, and that's when I got good. That was quite strange. Well done. And then they went to town on me.
Yeah. So, and then you went through, so you still had both cancers when you were doing that, and you spent 2 years going through that. And then the cancer moved on, or
Gone.
just gone completely.
So I had a heavy duty course of chemotherapy over 6 months, and then I had a double mastectomy and reconstruction, which lasted over. I did it in 2 separate surgeries, which are really big surgeries.
Yeah.
And that's it. By January of the year later, I went back to work part-time for a few months, and then went back into hospital for more surgery.
And you've done all this because, as you said, you first discovered the cancer, the first cancer, just after you and your husband had separated. You'd left your husband. So you've gone through this process pretty much by yourself. You haven't told your daughter about it initially. So had you told anyone about it outside of your doctors, or
just my close friends? That was it. Nobody else. My sister. Nobody else. I wasn't interested. I was just absolutely in denial. So I'm not doing this. I'm just not doing it. I mean, I look back now and think, what was I thinking? But actually, it was the best thing. It's weird, isn't it? Because it was a horrible diagnosis and a horrible time. And what happened was, because I had no choice but to stop, and I couldn't work. I wasn't allowed to work. I was having heavy duty chemotherapy and needed looking after. And I'm a nightmare to be looked after. I'm absolutely a nightmare. My sister got, oh God, yeah. My sister drew the short straw and had to come and look after me with chemo, and I was a nightmare. She used to say, I used to love coming to see you, but dread the abuse I was going to get from you because you just don't like it. So yeah, I was so independent through it all. But what happened was, I had to face my demons.
Yeah.
My demons all came out to play all at once, and oh boy, was it was an interesting experience of me trying really hard not to deal with them. Then I had no choice, so that's what I did. That's what I spent my whole recovery doing, was dealing with those demons.
Do you think that, because you mentioned before that you were running to hide, outrun the demons so that you didn't have to face them, and the fact that the cancer came in, you said you had to stop working, and so you were doing some writing in that period as well?
Yeah, so I decided that to stop myself from online shopping, I had to do something. so I started
more shoes. There's a formula that calculates how much. Well, for ladies it's shoes, and for men it's tools or whatever. There's a formula that calculates the maximum amount you should have.
I've got more than that.
I guarantee I have. Okay, the formula is n+1, which n being the current amount you have. So it's it's kind of a bit of a joke. I'm sidetracking you there.
So I started writing. So yeah, literally, I was sat here and thinking, what am I going to do? I've got a really long stretch ahead of me of treatment.
Yeah,
I know some of it I'm going to be out of action, but some of it I'm not. And what am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I decided to write. I literally started writing a blog. I thought, I haven't done this before. I've not really done any writing before. I absolutely fell in love with it, and I was able to write out my demons. So I was able to so sort of put them out in front of me and look at them for all their ugliness and actually write about them, and that's what I did. It was very cathartic.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it was very funny as well. It was funny. Yeah, it was funny. Yeah, I am, because I like humour. I like to find the lighter side of life, because life can be very hard, and I do like to find the humorous side in most things. So I did that with my demons.
Because I was going to say, if you're writing, because writing can lead to a lot of self-reflection. So it sounds, but did you go in with that intention for self-reflection, or just to start writing and then it led to that?
I just started writing. I actually started writing about my journey through cancer, actually, as how to save my hair and all that kind of rubbish. And actually,
really?
I did not intend to go deep and meaningful about it at all, but I really did. And I managed to get really clear about a lot of things. About I was able to look at my life and for what it was, and all the success and the millions of pounds I've made for other companies.
Yeah.
And the amount of people I trained and led, and all the wonderful teams I've created, and projects and brands, and I had done so much.
Mm.
And I was single for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
My daughter was 5. Me and my daughter got a very, very strong relationship, and she was 5 at the time. She's now nearly 15. So I did manage to still keep her doing great.
Yeah.
But I wrote and wrote and wrote about what I wanted life to be like, and it was my second glimpse of why I do what I do now. It was the absolutely get all my cards on the table and look at it all and see what needs to go, what needs to change, and what needs to improve. And
that's interesting, because that's part of what I wanted to ask you about. From the first time, because you said you're married and it wasn't a great marriage. I mean, how did you get into that marriage? I mean, and comparing it to the marriage that you have now, I mean, what was the motivation to when first time round?
Well, I think it's just actually it was actually my second marriage. My first marriage was on a beach in St. Lucia, and I cried so much. I cried so much in the ceremony they had to stop it and get some tissues. And at that point, I should have realised that I was doing the wrong thing. And it lasted 6 months, and I was really young.
Okay, how old were you when you got your first marriage?
I was in my sort of mid-20s. It was a absolute grasp for companionship. I didn't want to be on my own. It was like I was so lonely. I was work. And I thought just wanted something. So I met this guy. We ended up having a whirlwind, literally a whirlwind. Flew off to St. Lucia, got married against everybody's wishes. It was one of those. And then the second time, the guy I married was actually a friend of mine. We were friends first, and I thought we were good friends. We were work colleagues and we were friends. Yeah. And then we started dating, and again, it was more of I actually think for both of us, we were both lonely, and we were both clinging on to something that we thought would work. And I think we were clinging on to the hope, or this might be something. And we were actually probably clinging on to the ideal rather than the actuality for both of us. And we got married really quickly again. We flew to Las Vegas. I got married in a black dress. It was all very dramatic, very sassy, actually. Live up to my reputation. And then it just all went horribly wrong. He couldn't cope with the relationship, and when our daughter came along, he really couldn't cope. And he really struggled, and he was pretty emotionally abusive, and it wasn't very pleasant, and it felt like my lack of confidence he was playing on, and it was a very powerful. He was trying to be a bully. It was a bully, basically. Yeah. So that ended not well. But actually, as soon as we broke up, we were all right. We became friends again.
Oh wow.
We're not now, but we were for a while. Yeah, because he got silly. He got very silly about, and then tried to take me to court and all sorts of things, which was just so unnecessary. Because I didn't want anything from him. I wanted him to be happy. I wanted to be happy. Didn't want any money from him. I just wanted him to be a good dad to our daughter, and I could have nothing to do with it. Yeah. Between the two of them, I respected him and her enough to work it out, but it just never worked, and he was not a great dad, and I had to step in too many times. So yeah, sadly. I mean, when I ran the New York Marathon, we flew him back to New York with us to celebrate with us. Yeah, that's how well we were getting on. Yeah.
Because I'm just interested, because a lot of people, when you look at relationships, and that's something I think is really important for a lot of people, a lot of people want that. And there are a lot of people, that have really good relationships, and then I'm comparing the two of what you've talked about there, where you seem to, in both of them, you mentioned that there was a loneliness, that you were a hole that you were trying to fill.
Yes.
And I'm guessing, but and maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like when you met your current husband,
my current, yeah. No, I did a lot of work on relationships when I was ill, because I did not want to repeat any of the relationships I'd had before, because they were not good.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be, I'd rather be single forever than deal with that kind of thing again. So I decided that I'd never really worked out what I wanted in a relationship. I just had almost gone out with the first guy that asked me, kind of thing. I hadn't really thought long and hard about whether they are a match for my values, my future thinking, my, you know, my hopes and dreams, that kind of thing. So I sort of got a bit practical. I'm a very practical person. I like to plan things. So I got very practical, and I wrote lists of the kind of person I would want to be with. And the kind of characteristic, not what they look like. It was what they were, who they were. You know, what kind of what made them laugh, what made them cry, what made them smile, what made them chuckle, what made them upset or sad or hurt, or what did they love doing, what were their values, what, you know, how did they show respect towards themselves, which was really, really important to me. Because my dad always used to say to me, you need to you will see the value of a man by the shininess of his shoes.
I've heard that before.
If he shines his shoes, then he cares for himself, which means he cares for others. And it really stuck with me. And so on my list it had, he must shine his shoes, and you know, he must drink tea in bed with me in the morning, he must be able to laugh at my really bad jokes, he must be able to humour he must be able to go along with my crazy adventures, you know, and he must love what he does, he must love exactly what he does, he must have drive, passion, and all these things were really, really important to me. And this list took me a really long time, because I had to really push myself to think bigger than what I've been doing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's actually a reflection of who you are as well, isn't it? Because you tend to attract attracts like. So I did my list in my journal, and that list existed on the pages of my journal only for a while, until I actually met this guy. And I did vow to never, ever, ever compromise again. And if that meant single life forever, then bring it on. That's how I switched my mentality. I didn't need somebody, I just wanted somebody, and that was a big difference.
That's an interesting point that you just mentioned there as well. Like, you didn't need somebody, whereas before your first two marriages, you were talking about it, there was a loneliness, and because I find that interesting. I've with talking about marriage and relationships with a number of people, from people that I know that were arranged marriages, but though the arrangement was the parents made sure that they had very similar values, and there was a lot of core beliefs that connected, and as a result, they have very long-term, very happy marriage, which the passion has continued to grow. And then another friend of mine I was talking about this with, and he mentioned, you know, what you need to do is, and similar, you've mentioned something similar. He said, work out the list of what you want, and if they don't meet at least 80% of that, then you just don't date them anymore.
Well, see, mine was 100% of that. I needed to.
You were right up there.
Because I thought, you know what? I thought, like when you face a life-threatening illness, not once but twice in the space of 3 months, you do shift your perspective on everything. And I was a self-sufficient woman with my own earnings, working for a good company, my own daughter, my own house. I did not actually need anybody. But what I wanted was completely different. And I really realized that life is about doing what really makes your heart sing, not the rest. And that's kind of where I was going with it. I wanted that life now, not the kind of life I'd been living for a really long time.
Yeah, and that's, I think, how sounds like you found that as well, because the other point that I noticed that you talked about there was you focused on character, as opposed it wasn't about looks or things like that. And it's something, again, I've noticed with people that I know that are really, really happy relationships. When they look at each other, they see the most beautiful person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I was also meeting somebody after major surgery with a double mastectomy, reconstruction, scars everywhere. And that is something that's difficult to share with somebody new, actually. And so, like you said then, when that person looks at you, they look at you and they don't look at what they think they're going to see. So I was really scared about sharing my body, actually, again, after everything it had gone through. And when we met, and it was like I sort of metaphorically got my list out and thought, oh, gosh, he does all these things. This is quite unusual. And but I had this test where I had to show him my scars and my body, because what was if it was just a step too far? And I'll never forget the sort of first time we spent the whole 24 hours together. I said to him, right, I'm going to take my top off now, but I'm going to close my eyes, and if you can't deal with it, just leave straight away. Just go, just slam the door behind you. So I did. I closed my eyes and thought, I'm either going to hear a door slam, like feet running away in a door slam, or he's going to stay. And of course he stayed. And he said then, I don't see your scars. I just don't see your scars. They're not, I've got massive scars. I'd look a bit like a shark's bitten me. He doesn't see them at all. So he only sees me, not what I think is there. And that's really powerful, isn't it?
Extremely. Because you wrote a blog on that. There's an article on your website about that. But it's interesting, like you say, I mean, you focused on character. You put that list out there and said, well, this is what I want. And unlike my friend who said 80%'s okay, you've gone, it's 100% or nothing.
Yeah.
And then this person has come into your life.
Yeah.
And as you said, he only sees you.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Very, very powerful. I mean, very, 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 very powerful.
What's that like to be in that relationship?
Oh, it's amazing. It's like the best thing that's ever, I feel like it's the best thing I've ever done, because I feel like I've created it as well. I feel like it's a purposeful creation that we've done together, because clearly he was looking for the same thing. So we did come together, and we've been together for nearly 8 years now. So we've been married for 5 of those. And this time I didn't run off to a different country to get married either, which is a good sign. But no, it's a very, very, very powerful relationship, because there's a trust between the two of us that I never knew existed in life. I never knew you could trust someone like that. I know that it's completely unconditional, and it's just completely unconditional. That in itself is something that I've never experienced before. But ultimately, the reason why it is as it is because that's how I feel about myself. So I reflect everything as we all do. I have unconditional love for myself. Therefore, it's reflected back from him.
Yeah. So is that a case of where you've actually, because you mentioned before the other two, you were feeling lonely and looking for something to fill that, and if you don't feel that love, then in yourself, then you're not going to be able to feel it from someone else. But you've gone through that process now, and because you are comfortable with yourself, you've made that list, you allowed, for the sounds of it, someone like that to come into your life.
Yeah.
How does that feel every morning to wake up and see that person?
Well, he's not with me every morning, sadly, because he works away. But
well, you know,
well, no, it's great. It's great. It's wonderful, because it feels like exactly like it should do. It feels relaxed, and it feels exciting, and it feels like we can wake up in the morning at the weekend, and we drink tea in bed, and we can talk for hours about, I actually don't know what about. We just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And it is exactly what I've always wanted, without me knowing I've always wanted it. Yeah. So now I've found it. It's perfect. And it feels wonderful. And I trust him implicitly. I never have any problems in fearing he's going to go off and do anything that maybe I may have done before in other relationships. Yeah. But the biggest difference is because I completely trust myself. So yeah. I am a massive believer that how we feel about ourselves is the kind of person we will attract towards us.
Yes.
So before I didn't trust myself, I didn't love myself, I didn't have any belief in myself, and I was attracting people to me that didn't have any confidence themselves or belief in themselves or love for themselves. So it was two people who came together who were both suffering with the same thing, and it was always going to be a disaster brewing. It was always going to be drama because you were two people who were trying to grasp onto something. you've got to find it within yourself first before you can then accept, welcome it into your world.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I have some friends that they work in resurrecting marriages, and they talk about it. You're not a person with marriage problem. You're a person bringing problems to the marriage.
Yeah.
And it sounds like. So how did you go? I mean, because you started writing, and it wasn't the intention of writing for self-reflection, from what you were saying, or to go on this journey. You were writing about cancer. How did that transition happen to that self-reflection? Because I think that's one of the hardest things for people to do. I know from my perspective, it was a similar sort of thing. You pretend it doesn't exist, and you keep moving forward. How did you make that transition to reflecting on yourself and making that journey?
I set myself the goal of writing every day.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot you can write about every day about saving your hair, if I'm honest. So I started to write about how I felt. So how having cancer was making me feel, and then that came into how my mum must have felt, and then the being a mum myself and how that feels, and sort of it was kind of a non-negotiable that I was not leaving her without a mother. This just wasn't going to happen. So what was I going to do about it? And it kind of just grew from there. This. Then before you know it, I couldn't stop writing because it all had to come out. Plus the fact I was advised by somebody to look at Julia Campbell's The Artist's Way, where she has done a process for artists who are suffering from writer's block or the equivalent of in whatever art you're doing. And her theory is that you free write every day for 3 pages. Yeah. And you don't look back at it, you just get the words out of your head. And after a while, it all starts to flow. Well, I started doing that as well. And that was transformational for me, because it was clearly felt like it unblocked something, some emotion in my mind that was keeping it all in, and I was able to get it all out. So that's how it all flowed.
So
I did have time. I had time as well, so I had time to write. So that's what I did.
Yeah. So it was a conscious choice just to write, and then from there it kind of morphed. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because you got to. I'm a it'll be unsurprising to hear, but I like to set myself goals. So I set myself a goal. Yeah, I know, shocker. So a goal to write every day, to write and post a blog post every day. That was my goal. So I had to find things to write about. Well, guess what? I wrote about myself, and it all worked.
Yeah. So from that perspective, if someone was, in a position where they needed to find some clarity, would that recommendation just write anything and just see where that goes?
Just write anything. Absolutely. I'd start free writing. I would just every day get a blank journal, and every day fill 3 A4 pages of handwritten writing. Don't ever look back, you can look back if you want, but you don't need to look back. And actually, the more illegible your writing becomes, the better, because that's how much your words are needing to come out. And do it every day, and I guarantee in a month you'll feel completely different.
Wow, that's very powerful. Because they do say that writing it out rather than just thinking about it makes it really crystallizes some things in your brain by actually writing, as opposed to typing as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, because it connects a part of your brain that it connects a different part of your brain, which is the creative part of your brain. And 42% of people who write down their goals achieve them, and that's a large number of people who, just from writing down what you want to achieve, means you're more likely to achieve them. If you write them down every day, then you're definitely going to be more likely to achieve them. But writing out how you're feeling is, and people will say, I was one of them. I'm not a journaler. I don't do journaling. I don't want to ask myself those questions. Yeah. Well, don't ask yourself any questions. Just write. It's very, very, very cathartic as well. And I found I felt freer, more able to think.
That's interesting that you say that, because a lot of times people, and I know from my experience when I've worked with, some career coaches and things that I've worked with, they talk about, asking questions and answering questions. And always found that really difficult to do. But what you're
Yeah,
suggesting is
yeah,
just write anything. That's
that's
whatever.
right. And absolutely. And you'll start with writing. I don't really know what I'm writing. I might cook that for dinner tonight, or I must remember to do that. And then when all that goes, you'll just start writing. And it's amazing how it happens. I would just say to anybody, just try it, because
Yeah.
you'll be surprised.
Yeah. So even if it is just writing, whatever pops into your head
Yeah.
to start with.
It will always start with a to-do list.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. It will always start with
And I can
I've got
imagine
to go
yours
and
was
do
quite
this, that,
long.
and the other. Yeah. First page is normally.
And how did that morph into? Because you said you promote self belief and self worth,
Yes.
make you capable
Yes.
of doing anything. How did it morph into that for you? I mean, how did you? Because you were mentioning, even though you were, you know. And this is a juxtaposition I want to understand a little bit more is, you were hugely successful in what you did. I mean, you're
Mm.
saying your marriage wasn't, quite right, and you've given the reason for that, and that makes sense. You're lonely, and you're both lonely, and you got together, and you were together. But from a career perspective, that wasn't
Mm.
an accident. You've achieved.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no, 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 no.
you saved someone's life on a dance floor, isn't it?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I did, yeah.
Well,
I
tell us
did.
that story before we move on. I want to hear that story.
Well, I was running a late night bar in a place called Romford in Essex, near just outside of London.
Yeah.
And this bar was the record breaking bar in sales for the whole company.
Oh
It was
wow.
massive. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
huge. And we were taking a lot of money. And at night we'd have 1,000 people in every single night. And one night there was a big sweeping stairway up from the dance floor, and I could see
Mm.
this guy. I could see something going on upstairs. Then I saw this guy walking downstairs, but he wasn't just walking downstairs. He was
Yeah.
sort of leaning a bit awkwardly on the stair, on the banister, thinking this isn't right.
Yeah.
So I went up to him, and I literally just went up to him, and he just fell into my arms.
Oh wow.
I fell back, managed to got him away from the crowds, and somebody had cut his neck, and he had severed an artery in his neck, and there was
Wow.
blood just. Oh yes, and I managed to put my hand
Oh my
in
God.
his neck and saved his life. And I had my hand in his neck until the paramedics arrived. I was covered in blood, and the paramedics went saying, thank, good job, thank you. And I kind of sort of looked at myself and thought, oh, what? I'm not trained for this. Do I get paid enough for this? What is going on? But this guy, so he lived, and he came to see me when he got out of hospital to say thank you to me. But then he got completely attached to me, and he used to follow me everywhere because he was, yeah, it was a bit weird. And then he sort of sorted himself out. And then I left. I didn't stay there for very long after that. I got promoted to do something different. But yeah, it was a bit of a dramatic. I mean, I feel very proud about what I did, and he's alive still.
Yeah, no, that's quite. I mean, how did you know to put like your finger in there to stop it bleeding, or was it just it was that
instinct?
Yeah,
just instinct. You see something and you just think that's bleeding. That shouldn't happen. How do I stop it? And I tried to put other stuff on it, but nothing was happening. And I think I maybe heard someone shout, "You've got to go harder." And that's when I thought maybe I'd seen it on TV or somewhere like that. Where those sort of moments where I think I've seen this, or I've heard this, or this is what you've got to do.
Wow,
I've only ever happened once. I never want to do it again.
No, I can imagine. And that's what I'm getting to. Like when we're talking about self belief and self belief particularly. I mean, you've in the career. I mean, when we look at what you've done, I mean, you've managed massive companies, complete divisions within that. Wouldn't that take self belief to do that?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But actually, what that took is me being really qualified. So I hid behind my qualifications for a really long time. So I became head of communications for the whole company with my last position there. And that's because I'd done a master's degree in leadership and strategy, which was heavily communications focused. And I not only got a distinction, I got the best score in the whole company for that year for the masters. I always did that. I always got very qualified, which is therefore I was the best person for the job. And I used to have severe imposter syndrome, thinking I'm going to get caught out here soon, that I'm going to be seen as someone who is an absolute fraud, that I can't do this at all. But of course, that's just our brains freaking out, isn't it? It's not a real thing. But I was just very qualified, and I worked really hard, and I had good people in my team. So it was always a team effort, but I always created really good and strong teams. And I was really good at it as well, actually. There's no denying that I did as well as I did because I was really successful and I was very good at what I did. But that came down to sheer hard work, not self-belief.
And that's the question I'm getting, but what I'm not getting from that is that you had the results. You were achieving a lot, but you're mentioning imposter syndrome where you were thinking that you weren't successful. How did you reconcile that? I mean, I'm not sure how because it's not. It wasn't like you were a fluke. You've had this long string of successes.
Yeah.
How did that not translation into self-belief?
Well, it is no different to I'm going to buy that. I've got this house, but I want to get a bigger house. I've got that car, I want to get a better car. I've got this because it's always that, because that's going to make me happy, and that's going to make me happy, and that's going to make me happy.
Yeah.
So I've got this, that's going to make me happy. But then that doesn't mean I believe in myself, though. It just means that I work really hard to achieve something, and then I get the results and I get the achievement, and then what? Okay, I'm still not happy. So that's not self-belief, because if I had self-belief, then I wouldn't need all that stuff, all those achievements to fill that gap. I would just completely believe in myself and in my abilities, and I wouldn't need all the whistles and bells around it to prove who I am. So I needed those qualifications. I didn't have the self-belief to say I'm good at this job regardless of whether I've got a master's degree or not. So I would always get the next certification. I qualified as so many things in my career to prove that I was good at my job, because I didn't believe it. I didn't have enough belief in myself to just be able to be me do me, as my mum would say.
So even though that you had the qualification, because I understand the thing about, you bigger house make you happy, new car make you happy, new boyfriend make you happy, that kind of thing. And I get that. I'm still, so even though you got the qualification, but there's something stopping you, even though you had that evidence. That's hard evidence that you're good at something.
I know, absolutely, but that doesn't mean you believe in yourself, though, because self-belief is a much, much, much deeper emotion than just I'm intelligent enough to achieve a qualification or a job status.
Right.
Self-belief is deeply rooted in the fundamentals of who you are as a person. What are you holding? What was I holding on to? What shame did I feel about my past, or the things I've done in my past, or the traumas I was still carrying the scars for? What did I, believing in yourself is deep self-love, and that is really hard for people to conquer. I struggled like mad for a long time to do it.
Yeah. So what you were saying is, it's the happiness side, but this belief in your ability, no matter what you achieved, you were never going to see that as a success because you didn't think inside that you were successful. Is that?
No, absolutely. I didn't believe myself enough. I just thought this could be a fluke. Anyone could get this qualification. Anyone could do this. It's just, who am I to think I'm different because I've just got this string of qualifications behind me. It's a great job. Well, anyone could do that, can't they? If you say it out loud, it sounds stupid, doesn't it? But because not everyone can do that. But I was in that position where I was just thinking, well, I was just go, like doing so well in all these jobs. Yet in my mind, well, anyone could do this.
Yeah, so that's the point I wanted to get to. So no matter what happened outside, your internal monologue was, anyone can do this. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you.
That wasn't a positive either. That was I'm no different. I don't need to have self-belief to do this because anyone could do this. This is just it's almost like you're half living. You've shut down a part of your belief system, and you're just functioning on the protective bit, the bit that can go in autopilot. The rest of it was just completely closed down, and that was a protection mechanism from when I was 15, I think, probably.
Yeah, so you've got this way of basically dismissing anything that gives you success, and it was like anybody can do this. That was your way of dismissing it and just putting it to the side.
Yeah.
It's interesting how we do that. What was your aha moment where you went, when you're going through your writing and you went, hang on a minute, I'm actually good.
Well, interestingly, it didn't come straight away. It took its time, because even when I got through my treatment, like, I say all this now, it sounds so stupid. I got through my treatment like really well, and like managed to keep hold of my hair, and no one could believe it. And I sort of sailed into hospital looking a picture of health, yet I had cancer. It's like the nurses were like, who is this woman? It was a bit like me being at the extreme of I've got to do everything, to its full. And I think it wasn't really until I met my now husband that started to really truly believe that I really found this way of loving myself, and realizing that self-love actually is not the wishy-washy concept I thought it was years before. It's actually the life force of everything that we do, and without it, without it, I was living a half life.
Yeah,
and I wasn't feeling. I was just functioning very well, but I was still not. It was a very unfulfilled existence. Whereas when I had gone through my treatment, had my surgery, I was all finished and fixed, and I was able to go into the world again, full of sort of zest and adventure. And then I thought, I know what this is. This is because I now really truly love myself, and I believe that I can do anything because of it.
Yeah,
I don't need another qualification or another. I just don't need them all. I can just be me, and that is enough. And that interestingly goes right back to what my mum said to me all those years ago. That just be you, and you'd be all right. You should just listen to all that time ago.
That's really fascinating, because your mum had said that. And sorry, I had a question. Then you mentioned that bit about your mum, and you've gone, no. This is, I love it. It's like, it's so exciting, because your mum had said that from such an early age, and then you've shut that out, and then you've come full circle. And you mentioned, is it a case of, because you mentioned this also started to grow. It sounds like you'd already started on that journey, and then you met your current husband. Who then helped, through that relationship, helped that grow even more. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe that actually I wouldn't have met him unless I'd gone through this process of finding myself. There's a film called The Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts in. And if anyone's watched that film, there's a bit where she can't decide what egg she likes, what type of egg she likes, because she always eats the eggs that her partners or fiancés have made for her. Yeah. And she went through this process of cooking all the different types of eggs to work out what she liked. Well, I kind of did that with me. I kind of decided what eggs I liked and what I wanted out of my life, and what made me really, really happy. And actually, when I first started this process, I didn't know. I had no idea. Which was really scary, because how would you not know what makes you happy was the question I kept having for myself. But I knew what didn't make me happy, but I had no idea what made me happy. And that was a really a big shock for me, because I thought, how can I not know this? Yeah. So that's when I did the whole list thing about not what kind of partner do I want, what kind of career do I want, what kind of life do I want, even what kind of holidays do I want, what kind of travel do I want?
Yeah.
Right, what kind of house do I want? What kind of home do I want? Not house. So I did it with everything, and it really helped me shape the person that I wanted to be and the life I wanted to live. And it wasn't surrounded by stuff. It wasn't surrounded by big houses, and it wasn't with flash cars, and it wasn't with all the trappings of the things that I thought I needed before I was ill. It was about log burners and marshmallows and open fires
I
and
love it.
your music and reading and chatting, deep and meaningful chatting. It was all about that rather than the rest. And it really helped me see how to rebuild my life again. At the age of 42, I was given the opportunity to be able to have a blank canvas and start again. So I did, and I went back to work, and actually I didn't stay there. So the company had really looked after me through my illness and really had cared for me, and I appreciated everything they'd done. But of course, I had made them millions and millions and millions of pounds in the job in the time I'd been there, so it was sort of fair deal, really.
Yes.
But and I decided to. I felt a big burning desire to get out into the world and share and help other people do this as well.
Yeah.
That was the start of my journey of me working for myself.
So so from that process, you've gone through, started writing, you've discovered who you are, and you became, from what it sounds like, you got really clear about what it is you wanted, but that step sounded like it was really hard. And because I experience that a lot when I speak to people, when I ask them, and I switched the question from asking them, what do you want, to asking them, what do you choose? And that seemed to, because that you actually have a choice.
Yeah.
Was that your experience as well? Like when you're going, you were just doing what you thought was the right thing to do, not really thinking about that you actually have a choice as to what's important for you?
Completely. I was just blown with the wind. And actually I fell into a very traditional kind of existence, thinking that when I was a child and I was growing up, you get married, you have kids, you get a job, you go on holidays once a year, and you know that's then what happens. I don't know what happens, because my mum died when I was very young, so the world changed. But I kind of fell into that trap of, well, that's what you do, isn't it? I get a job, I'll get married. I didn't want to have a kid, then I did, and then I sort of followed I just really just followed the path. I had no plan. I hadn't, if someone said to me, what's your 5-year plan, I would have laughed at them. I had absolutely no idea, none whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was only when I got ill that I realised that I had a choice in everything that I do, like absolutely everything that I do.
Yeah. Do you think that's what contributes? Because they talk about today, people, as much as we have, so much more ability to connect with people than ever before. Like you and I were on the opposite sides of the world and having a conversation, or I'm probably asking you more questions because I'm interrogating you.
Right, don't worry.
But apparently we feel more alone and separate. Do you think that's because we don't realize that we actually have that choice, and we're too busy being driven, allowing ourselves to be driven by what is out there as opposed to what we choose?
Yeah, we're not shaping things ourselves. We're just going with what's already going on. And I also equally think that lockdown has had a massive impact on a lot of people, because we didn't have a choice at the time. Our choices were taken away slightly. But then my biggest fear with all of this is that we're not shaping our worlds. We're following, we're not leading. There's too many people following and not leading. I don't really know what's happened there, to be honest. Because you're right, we are the most connected we've ever been, ever. And we have the ability to do pretty much anything we put our minds to, really. I don't really know why why so many people aren't, and why there's so many followers in the world and not more creators.
Do you think that is the self-belief and self-worth thing, that people don't believe that they are capable of more?
Absolutely. The great Marianne Williamson quote of who am I to think I can do this? Who am I to think I can go off and do X, Y, and Z? Well, who are you not to? Because we're all so completely unique, and we've all got something different to share the world. And something that I say might, even if it just helps one person, then that's enough. Something that you say if that just helps one person, then that's one person's life changed. And I think if everybody thinks that, then how many millions of lives will be changed from one perspective? And I think if you've got the belief that you can say whatever you believe, within, as long as it's not being offensive and you're not doing anything stupid, but the way that we're talking at the moment, then people are too scared of looking stupid or being criticized. And actually, I would say, bring it on. If I'm being criticised, then it means I'm doing something good. Because you've got to divide the audience, because then you know that you're saying something that means something.
Do you think that's the case, though? Like with people, this fear of being criticised? I mean, from my experience, from what I've seen out there, when someone does something good, majority of people seem to support that from what I've seen.
Oh, yeah, of course, absolutely. But, there's always the odd one here and there, isn't there, doesn't like it. I always say that my first troll on Instagram in my minute following, I really felt like I made it. I really felt I've done something that's upset somebody in a stupid way. Fantastic. And it's all born out of jealousy anyway, isn't it? People who troll or criticise, they're not happy with their own lot, therefore they're going to project onto everyone else. And I don't see it as being a problem. But you're right, majority support, and that's the important thing.
Because I wonder about that, and this is where I can relate to your I'm going to say drivenness. I'm going to call it OCD in me. But because I used to, a long time ago, I would complain when I get red lights, and I go, I'm always getting the red lights. And with my OCD, I actually started counting the red lights and green lights that I got. And it turned out that I was getting way more green lights. But because I was upset with this is my rationale that I put it down to, because I was upset with the red lights, it stood out more. So that seemed to be my world. And do you think that might be a sort of similar thing that happens when you're dealing with, like, for example, internet trolls? Because like you said, you've got one person that's complained, but you've got all these other positive comments, but it's that one that complains that stands out. And do you think we lose perspective sometimes?
Completely, because of the 60 to 70,000 thoughts that a human being has in a day, 80% of those are negative, because we're negatively biased. Therefore, we will always focus on the negative and forget about the good. So a lot of the work that I do helps people I encourage people to write down their celebrations and their wins and their good things, or they can always refer to it, because you've got to reprogram yourself a little bit to go, yes, that may have happened that wasn't brilliant, but look at all this amazing stuff that's happened that's fantastic. It's always it's always that way, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I love the fact that you say about writing down the celebrations. It's a conscious choice that I made a long time ago, is when I go to bed, I focus on, what is it that I did do, not what I didn't do.
Absolutely.
And it just makes a big difference in your world. How did you like, you've gone through this period of where you're journaling, and then you've discovered, the belief in yourself. You've met your husband, who's then, your now husband, and who helped further that journey. So you're ready for that relationship, which is helpful. How did that then morph into the business that you now run, helping other people discover their self-worth and self-belief?
So I again, probably won't surprise you that I qualified as a health coach and a life coach whilst I was going through my chemotherapy, because I didn't want to. I
did read that, and then no, it doesn't surprise me, even though I knew it was coming.
I didn't want to fall back into bad habits, because I really felt like I was driven by habits. So I didn't want to fall back into bad habits. So I was already a qualified business coach. And I was already, with all my string of qualifications, I was still hiding behind my qualifications. I qualified as a life coach, and I really did love the habit forming, sort of mindset shifting stuff that I learned. And it wasn't new news, actually. It was just more reinforcing what I already knew. And because I had this sort of zest of this passion for, no woman should have to deal with this after such an illness. Just no way. But then, because I also had to have my ovaries removed as a precaution, and I went into really early menopause, and it was horrible. It was like catastrophic, and it took me a really long time to get myself back. And I did have a moment of, no woman should ever have to deal with this. And if the reason why I found that I dealt with it as I did, and I got the help I needed, because I had this very strong self-belief in me as a person. And I valued my life so much, and valued my sanity and the sanity of my husband and daughter, that I think that changed everything. And if I look back to all of my times of when I've done some amazing things, when I created my daughter, I had a belief that was going to work, that was so rock solid, that I just never doubted that would ever be the case. when I was ill, I had a belief that I was going to recover and I would never get it again. And I was going to be doing some amazing things and meeting and changing my life. And again, when I went through a menopause situation, I had the belief that this isn't what life is about. And I sort of found that so powerful that I felt like I had no choice but to help other women do the same. And that's where it all came from. So I tend to work with predominantly women, actually. I do work with men as well, but predominantly women who just feel like they're just getting started at whatever age they're at, and they just want a blank canvas to go for.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. And what I noticed that you said there was that you focused on recovery. So, and the reason I say that is, I look at my history and there's times where I've smoked and I was always able to quit smoking because when I wanted to stop smoking, I just focused on being healthy and breathing clean air.
Exactly. Yeah.
Was that a conscious choice to be outcome focused?
I always focus on
instead of saying I'm not going to be sick, you said I'm going to recover. That they're very different.
Absolutely. So I did I am qualified in the Stephen Covey method.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Of course. And so his 7 habits of the highly effective. One of the habits is start with the end in mind.
Yes.
And that habit has always stayed with me. So with every single thing that I do, I think, okay, what is the point of recovery? Because that's the point I want to work from, and then I work backwards. So my point of recovery with IVF was I have a daughter, I have a child, whatever sex the child was. That was always, it was never going to be, it was just non-negotiable. And I was so rock solid in that belief. I started to behave like a mother before I was even a mother.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, so I ran the marathon in 2018 after not being able to barely walk 4 years earlier.
Wow.
And I wasn't a runner at all, but I adopted the mindset of, I'm a runner now. This is what a runner would do. And I made decisions that way. So the point of recovery was crossing the line in New York.
It's amazing how powerful that end in mind, focusing on that outcome, as opposed to what you don't want, because your unconscious mind doesn't know don't.
No. Well, because I love visualization. I'm a visual person regardless, but I love visualization. I love something called mental rehearsal, where athletes use all the time, where they picture them actually through their eyes achieving whatever they're doing. And because our subconscious doesn't like risk, when you do mental rehearsal, you're practicing, your subconscious thinks that you've already done it. Therefore, when you do it, it's actually a lot easier. Yeah. That's equally powerful.
And do you think that also helps you recognize opportunities in front of you as well? Because sometimes, I believe there's opportunities always there. We just don't see them because we're not open to that. Do you think that visualizing that in the mind helped you, and what you teach others help other people see what's right in front of them?
Absolutely, because if you do a timeline of, so just use a marathon training for example. So I'm running a marathon again next year because I hit my 10 years clear in January.
Wow.
So doing it again, and at the moment the thought of running a marathon makes me want to curl up in bed and go to sleep.
I was going to say, I felt like I wanted to throw up when you said that as well.
But but I know that actually the point of recovery is crossing the line in New York with my husband who's running it with me, and us being happy and doing it in a way that we're not crying as we cross the line. So that means that I work backwards and think, okay, it's January in not long. I've got 9 months really of training, and it completely changes my planning, because I know that I've got to start running. I have no choice. So I just go and start running because I know I've got to plan it out. And so because if you don't have a timeline, you'll just drift. Yeah, that's it. So you've got to have. I love a bit of accountability anyway, and I know that if I've got that thing I want to achieve, I will do it.
A little bit of accountability, or a lot?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. Yeah, but I also find though that when I work with people for the first time and I do this with them, their mind is blown by, I've got to start now then. I said, well, yes, you do. When they were really thinking, I don't need to start from the 3-4 years, but actually they've got to start now. And it really does open up people's lives, and therefore the opportunities come, because suddenly you start looking for them. It's amazing what you can see when you start looking for them. So, before I ran a marathon, I didn't know anyone who'd run one. when I started to train, suddenly everyone had run one. I was open to the fact that I was looking at different things and talking to different people. It's just the opportunities, isn't it? It's the opportunities that you find when you open your eyes enough to see. And that's the trick.
Yeah, well, that's your reticular activating system kicking in, isn't it? Where it's like when you buy that car and you step out and you go, oh, the car's everywhere, but it's not like everyone bought the car at the same time.
Yeah, it's always been there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What's that like with working with people when you see their eyes open and go, oh.
No, that's why I do it. That's exactly why I do the job. It's incredible. Seeing people's lives transform and seeing the excitement and the achievements is just, there's nothing like it. It's like seeing your own kids achieve something. It's really, really, really amazing. And I really believe that people can make a big difference in life, and it doesn't have to be an ongoing thing. So I think the myth about coaching is you're broken. No one's ever broken. I don't believe that anyone's broken. No one needs fixing. Yeah. And also that you need coaching forever. Well, of course you don't. You just get the tools and the strategies, you learn how to use them, and then off you go. And I'm very big on sort of that kind of work. So you see it all come into like a jigsaw coming together, and it's very magical. Yeah, it's very magical indeed.
Yeah. And if I understand correctly, and maybe I've got it wrong, but it seems that you've got 4 pillars that you focus on, and pillars might not be the right word, but you talk about the relationship with your body, with yourself, with your body, with your finances, and your future. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about each of those different ones and why they're important? So, the relationship with yourself, what is that? I mean, I'm taking it that's the order you work in as well. Is that correct?
Yes, completely. So I work with the relationship with yourself and your body. You have to have some trust in yourself that you're able to make some changes. Otherwise, you're never going to make any changes. Yeah. So I always work with somebody about the reasons why they wanted to do some work with a coach. Because if they don't know the reasons why, then they're never going to make the changes, because there's a whole lot of work to do. You can't just decide to do something and go and do it. You've got to change your thought processes and your belief system to get to the place where that change becomes natural. Yeah. And that's the work that we do. So the work with yourself and your body is just the real basics of de-stressing, and not what you eat and not how you exercise, but making sure that how you eat and how you de-stress your digestive system, and how you understand about the balance that you need to create, the energy flow, and the kind of foods you need to eat to promote energy, not take it away. Yeah. And all that's really important. So I do a lot of work on that, and then also do a lot of work on the reason why they want to be there for themselves, their views about themselves, what they think about themselves, and how we can change that, and who they want to be at the end of this process. So that's a big chunk of the work. And then once the body is calmed down, it enables the intuition to kick in, and it enables the whole of all senses to work together to create a better experience, which means that you can think more clearly about what you actually want and how you want to achieve it, and who you want to bring on board with you. Because a lot of times people don't do something because of other people. They're worried about how it's going to affect other people in their lives. Yeah. Yes. And that's something we really work a lot on, because it's the assumptions we make about what people think about what we're doing, rather than directly asking them or helping them understand, and how not to stop doing something you want to do because of someone else. So when I was ill, I read a book by a woman called Bronnie Ware called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. A random book to read when you've got cancer, but you have to bear with me on this one, because the first regret was I didn't do what I wanted to do because of somebody else. Right. And it really impacted me, because I thought, how can you not live a life because of someone else? Yeah. Number one. But also, what if you're the person that stops somebody else living their life? And either one was making me feel, this is just not how I want to do it. Yeah. I want to be able to do what I want to do. I want other people to do what they want to do as well. Yeah. So then, because money is such a big thing for a lot of people, and it was for me, the amount of debt I got in and how I got out of debt. Yeah. The relationship with money is a massive key factor for people to make a change. So I work a lot on finances, work a lot on money mindset, and expansion and sort of really thinking differently about what finances and money is for that person, which is very powerful. And then we work on future, which is what they want to achieve, what they came here to do in the first place, their purpose, transforming their lives to fulfill their purpose, really.
So is it kind of like for you, getting yourself and your body right becomes a foundation?
Yeah.
And is money, because money's in there, a lot of people from my experience have problems with money from the perspective of, especially self-sabotage. People get to a certain level, then they'll pull back and do things.
Absolutely,
yeah.
So how we do one thing, we do everything. As I'm a massive believer that we always have similar experiences across all the areas of our life if we look really hard.
Yeah.
But money seems to be the one that sticks out for nearly everybody I talk to. And it did for me as well. So I tackle that head on, because I think once that is cracked, then that's where the magic happens.
It's interesting that you do that, because not a lot of people actually make that as a specific pillar to focus on. And we've got that in share.care as one of our principles is money, because it provides security. It also provides opportunity. I've heard people say money doesn't make you happy, but then neither does poverty. So it's not.
No. And also you need money to help other people if you want to as well. So actually the energy that money provides creates abundance for the world, and it's not a selfish thing. It's actually more selfish not to create, because actually, the job that I do, I earn money, and if I don't earn money for what I do, I can't help any more people.
Yeah.
So I can do it a very limited amount, but then that's it. I'd have to go back to doing a different job, and that's not what my plan is. And the same for anybody. I think it's actually, that's how the world works. It's about money. Money used to be an exchange of goods, didn't it? Didn't used to be pound notes and coins. It used to be, I'll coach you and you massage my back, or whatever the would go. But it doesn't work anymore. But I think that actually people have got massive issues with money, and they've got big issues with how they think about money, and it could be tied to their family's beliefs about money. Could be tied about what they think what happens to people when they have money. But actually, you don't want anybody in poverty. And to get the world out of poverty, you've got to generate a different mindset around everything.
Do you think there's a connection with self-worth and because I've been fortunate to know a lot of people that have a lot of money, and what I was surprised, because I didn't grow up with that. My parents were World War II. My grandparents, I should say, were World War II immigrants. Came here with nothing but suitcases, and that was it. And I didn't understand that mentality, but I've been fortunate through things that I've done that's put me in a position where I was associating people that were mega wealthy. And what surprised me most was how giving they were as people. First, and it wasn't that they had money and then they chose to give. That was their nature, that was their character. And do you think, with this work that you're doing and the experience that you're having, as people create this, and they also had very strong belief in themselves, so strong self-belief, self-worth. So do you think, this thing about money, because it's something that I've pondered a lot, is, as we grow in our self-belief and self-worth and having this money, the money becomes not this, but this thing, as you're talking about, that we can actually help more people and people will earn that. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, completely. So I think what you most want in the world, you must give.
Yeah.
I think you want love, you must give love. If you want abundance, you must give abundance. Yeah. It can't be a one-way street with anything. So the most wealthy people are the most giving with the most self-belief, because I also find that people who have wealth then lose wealth are those that have who have low self-belief, because they don't believe that they're worthy of that amount of wealth, therefore they'll dissipate it. So it's really connected to your worth, and how much you want to help other people, because that's kind of where it all works, because we are so connected as human beings. I think when you become shut down and you just do it for me, it doesn't work. Actually, I think there's got to be a generation. It's got to flow.
Yeah, it seems to be that case of people that want to give back more, that have that self-belief first. And that's why I was really fascinated by those pillars and the order that you would put them in, because it seemed to have a logical thing. You have to be whole first before you can take that next step. And having those finances sorted enables you to actually leverage what you can do.
Completely. I mean, and I do this not only because I'm trained to do it, but also this is kind of what I was like. You know, I had wealth, I lost wealth, I had wealth, I lost wealth, I had wealth, I lost wealth. And guess what? I didn't believe in myself. Therefore, I had no business keeping hold of it.
Yeah.
You know, I would always say that I felt like money was like sand through my hands.
Yeah.
Because it was just, I didn't know how to keep hold of it because I just had no self-belief. The minute I believed in myself, the minute it all stopped, it's like, okay, I don't need all this stuff, but I want to create a business where I can help other people create the lives they want, because then that creates more for others and more for others and more for others. It's a ripple effect of what we do. I think is very powerful.
Yeah, no, that's it's interesting that you think like that, because I completely relate to what you're talking about. I mean, the things that I can do now is because of the finances that I have. I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't, and help the people that can.
And there's one thing, the reason why I have body in it as well is, which is unusual for most coaches, really. They don't tend to cover health and money and stuff. Is because, one, I struggled with my own body for such a long time in terms of me being ill, but also not caring for myself, you know, living off cheese and crackers and red wine, which is what I did for a long time. But also understanding that if your body is under stress, you can't focus properly and you can't think properly, and you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve if your body's fighting against itself the whole time. So there's sort of loving your body again as well, which creates a desire to care for it.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because, and I was talking about the wine and crackers, because I'm Polish, Ukraine background. So there was a period where I was drinking 2 bottles of vodka a day, and that was just normal, and I didn't even get drunk. It was just, that's the way it was. And it's funny how you go through this transition, and, well, for me anyway, I went through that transition where I don't even need it to be happy anymore. I'm just happy every day. And I was talking with someone who mentioned that the actual high of giving is much greater than any, and I hadn't heard it put that way, but they talked about a high of giving is much stronger than, and he took some fairly illicit drugs, and he just said the giving high is much higher and lasts longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that, actually. Because actually the giving high is inclusive, whereas the drug high is completely selfish, because it's about you, isn't it? You're experiencing nobody else's. Yeah, when you're giving, whether it's a technique, a piece of information, a reassurance that there is a way out, or options, that kind of giving is very powerful, because it's sort of spreading. I mean, that's got a real ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly the same thought I had when he mentioned that to me. I went, yeah, it's because the drug high is selfish. It's just you.
Yeah.
And what about the future component? Why is that so important in your pillars?
Well, because I believe that we always should have a plan, and whether that plan is, I knew.
How detailed your plan?
Oh God. You want to see my spreadsheets?
I love your mood. Was it mood board?
Yeah.
I saw that on your website.
Yeah, I have the physical version right in front of me. But I think and I believe that people who work with me are going to be like me, because we always attract people who are like ourselves, who will get my blunt humour and my very sort of get to it attitude. Is that I like to be able to see my future, so I like to be able to see things that I'm aiming towards, and whether that actually I achieve that actual thing is not really the point. The point is I'm striving for a life that I'm working towards, and it makes me think, I really want to be able to live in France by the time I'm 60. So I've got 8 years to do that before, and I would really like to be able to have renovated an old house in France.
Oh, beautiful.
That's what I really want to do.
Paris is such a beautiful city. I loved being in Paris as well.
I love the whole lifestyle of France. So for me to do that, I know that I have a picture of a house in France. It's not going to. It's just I found the picture, but I have that the stone walls and the shutters, and it reminds me of France. And it makes me think, okay, what am I doing today to get towards my dream? What action am I taking today to get towards that house in 8 years' time? And that's what I think future is really important, because I might change to Italy, or I might change to America, or I might just stay in the UK, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, every day I'm thinking, what am I doing today to move close towards my dream? So if I didn't have that dream or that future thinking, then what am I working towards? What am I doing? I'm just here. I'm being, living a great life, but I'm just here. And that's the difference. I feel more motivated, and I find other people are more motivated to take opportunities, to find opportunities, to take chances, to ride the luck on things, or take the things that look like hard work because they've got a plan. If you don't have a plan, I sort of feel like you're just drifting. And I've drifted for 30 years and I don't want to do that anymore. So I think that when I help people come up with their plan, it's always really, really, really powerful, because they suddenly have something they want to work towards, they can talk about with their families. We talk about our house in France in 8 years' time. None of us have any clue at the moment how we're going to do it, but we will do it, because we talk about it, we bring it to life. We put it out there in the universe.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that about having that visualization, because I imagine when you're talk about it with your husband and who you're talking about, you're visualizing as though it is in existence already.
There, absolutely.
Because I wonder about, and I write about this, and it's in part of the book that I'm writing at the moment, because I don't believe procrastination exists. I don't think you don't procrastinate anyway. But the point that I'm getting to with that is, because even though I think you mentioned you didn't have a plan, but you might not have had a long-term plan, but you had a plan to get this degree and a plan to do this in business, and you had that, even though it wasn't a big bit, you always had these things that you were working to achieve. Yeah. And when I say I don't believe procrastination exists, what I'm getting to is, like, if someone, and I've done this, so this is how I know it's true, is that when I'm binge watching Netflix, my future is binge watching Netflix. I'm not procrastinating. I'm doing exactly what I'm planning to do.
You always win the game that you're playing every time.
Exactly. That's my point.
That's what you're talking about. That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Exactly.
See, procrastination is not a thing. You're just playing a game. Life. If you just see life as a game, the game that you're playing at the time, you'll always win. And if binging Netflix is it, you're doing it, you're winning it. Yeah, absolutely get you.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating thing, and that's why I love what you're talking about, and wanted to ask about the future part of it and how you describe that, because if you've got that clear in your mind and you have that every day, like you say, you've got your mood board right in front of you with that picture there, so remind you of that. And that's the other thing that I was wondering about, because your steps seem fairly simple, and to me, I believe life is simple. You want to have money, keep a surplus, invest that surplus, and reinvest the income. That's not a hard instruction.
No, it isn't.
You want a good relationship.
Define. How would you do that, though? That's the point. Because I'm with you. Life is not difficult, and actually, the solution is always simple. Yeah. The problem with us humans is we overcomplicate everything. Yes. And if the formula is too simple, it's not going to work, is it? Because we need overcomplicated systems to reassure us that actually it's going to work, when actually it's the complete opposite. Everything is really simple. We just overcomplicate it because we don't believe in it enough. So the belief part is so strong, because when you start to believe in your own future, you'll believe in the simplicity of how to get there. Because like you say, all I do is I have a picture of a house in France. Yeah. I also have a picture of a kitchen island that I really wanted to put in, which we have not done. And it's been looking at me for so long that about a month ago, I just went and did it. I've now taken that picture off my board and I've replaced it with something else because I wanted Christmas I wanted to people round and I wanted to have them sat there on this island with stools in front of it, and I had this image of connection and laughter and that kind of thing. So that's where that came from. So now I put something else there.
So you had this image of this kitchen island that it's been sitting there for a while, and now it exists.
Yeah,
simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. Simple as that. It is. I go to work every day and I think, okay, what am I doing today to get closer to my dream? Whether it be helping more people, writing more, achieving what's on my board, whatever it is, what am I doing? So I'm always in action because I know what I'm working towards. And I think that's the difference. When you don't know what you're working towards, what are you doing? You're just going through the motions.
Yeah. I'm interested in what you said about why people don't do this, because even like when we're talking about money, listening to Warren Buffett talk, he says, if you've got a high IQ, get rid of about 20 of them because you won't need them. What do you think it is? What do you really think it is that, because life to me is simple, and we've just talked about how it is. The instructions are simple. Want money, it's fairly straightforward. You want a good relationship, define exactly what you want character-wise, and it happens. There's so many things that are you can distill down to a couple of very simple instructions to achieve things. What do you think it is that why do we need to make it complicated? What causes that?
Well, I think one, we're not really taught this stuff when we're growing up in our informative years. I think that we will pick up the beliefs from our family, and there might be some very negative financial beliefs. Rich people aren't very nice, or people change when they have money, or the ones that are here all the time, or who am I to? I'm not. I'll never be rich. Well, if you keep on saying that, then it will come true. And all these beliefs that we've got that are often hidden beliefs as well about we know that the majority of our beliefs, our core beliefs, are formed before the age of 7. So you may have heard and kids want to be the solution. You'll hear things and you'll make what that means, and it won't mean that at all. And it might be a skewed money belief. I think finding those beliefs is very important. That's why I always have finances in there, because, like you say, actually, it's very simple. It's money as well. I think is seen as something scary, something that people don't know, something people don't know how to handle. How many people do you know who dare not look at their bank statement or their credit card bill arrives and sort of peek into the envelope, or they just spend without any thought to if they've actually got this money or not. And there is another thing as well of, well, somebody will bail me out, or I just won't pay it, or there's sort of all these toxic kind of ideals that have happened. And I know all this, I've done them all. So I did it all from when I was younger. And actually, money's just energy. That's what it is. It's just energy. It's an exchange of energy. I do something, I get paid for it, and then I protect that what I earn, and I nurture it. It's a relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
That's it.
I know from my perspective. I mean, beliefs around money and simple shifts as well. I was focusing on, because it's saying, having a surplus. But a lot of people say you got to spend less than you earn, and I was doing that, and it sucked. I hated it. It was like I got all these things I want to buy, and I got to spend less than I earn. I went, why don't I do this differently? Why don't I earn more than I spend? And I made that shift, and all of a sudden, all this extra money came into my life. It was a simple shift like that. So, because spending less than you earn sucks.
Completely. And now I'm a big believer in, if you want something because you want something, then fantastic, go and buy it. If you want something that's going to make you happy, then you can't buy it. It's my rule. It's a rule that I'm teaching my daughter, who's nearly 15. They say, if you want something and you really want it, it's going to really fill you with joy. Get out. I'm all in. But if it's because it's a competitive thing because your mate's got it, or because you think it's going to make you happy, not interested. And I will ask her those questions before she buys anything big now. So she hates it, but it's going in, definitely, because then I used to buy stuff because I thought it was going to make me happy, and it just got me into a world of trouble. Now I'm just like you. Well, I do want things because I want to have I want to have my kitchen island, and I want to buy my house in France, and I want to renovate this, that, and the other. But I only want to do that because I am living a fulfilled and abundant life, and I'm doing good in the world. You know, there's a trade-off. I work hard for it, and I want that kind of reward. But I would sort of think, well, I'll just earn more money then. I'll just do something different. I'll have more money coming in. I will treat my money differently. I'll make it work harder for me. I will love my money and it will love me back, kind of thing.
Yeah, no.
Rather than be scared.
Well, I mean, it's interesting what you mentioned there about, loving the money, but having that focus on the outcome of what you were wanting to achieve. But the distinction that you made between you wanted it to make you happy as opposed to you are happy and you want to have these things because you just want them.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a massive Lego collection, not to impress people with, and I couldn't care less what anybody thinks about. I do like showing people, but I'm not doing it because I need it to make happy. I like it. It's my nothing box, so to speak, where I go to and have my time.
And that's a big distinction. I would urge anyone to ask themselves what they're buying things for.
Yeah.
Is it because it's filling a hole? Well, if it is, then nothing will fill that hole apart from until you fill it yourself with love. That's it. No shoes, not even the biggest designer shoes in the world are ever going to fill that hole. Never, ever, ever, ever. But just loving yourself is the only thing. It's the biggest thing I've learned in life so far. Is it changes everything.
Yeah, and I think that test is, or for me, the test is, when I buy something, I'm like, if I didn't show anybody this, would I still be happy with it?
Yeah.
Would I still want it? And majority of times I say yes, so I buy it.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, if I don't need to talk about it or show somebody, then I know I'm doing it because it'll make me happy.
Yeah,
then it's a good test, actually, a very good test. Yeah.
Yeah. So from the perspective of, your because you mentioned you primarily work with women, but you also work with men too. Is that the case?
Yeah. So I've worked with anybody who is ready to transform their lives to something different. And they might not know what different looks like at the moment, but they just know that they want to be different to what they're doing at the moment. And so I predominantly work with women just because that's just who I tend to attract.
Yeah.
But I've also worked with men who are, I'll just say really, it's anybody who is eager and ready to do something new and they don't know how to do it.
Yeah. That's an interesting point that you mentioned, because you mentioned ready twice then. How does someone know they're ready?
Well, because they are bored of themselves.
Yeah.
They get to the place where they're so bored of their own sort of internal chatter of dissatisfaction that they need to do something about it. And the reason why I say ready is because a lot of people are never ready and they'll never want to be coached, because there's some people are uncoachable, and that's fine. It's not a criticism, actually. It's just that some people are not built that way and actually don't want to change anything, and great, fantastic. But those people who feel ready to take on their life, to do something different without having a big diagnosis, or I often say I want to help people get to the place I got to before I was diagnosed. So why wait till you get cancer to change your life? Because that's what I did. So if I could get to people before they get to that place of getting a big shocking piece of news, then, and maybe the fact that actually you need a alarm bell to ring to make people look differently. But I believe in the power of looking at your life and thinking, is this it? And if this is it, are you happy with it or not? And if you're not happy with it, what can I do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, because you're mentioning asking questions there, which I'm guessing is leading to being able to listen. I mean, how important is being able to listen to being ready?
No, you can't not listen. You have to listen. Listening's everything, actually. Listening's better than talking, even though I talk a lot, but I do listen. I'm a deep listener. So I have a bit of a superpower in terms of when people talk, I can normally hear the unsaid words, which makes the coaching very powerful.
No,
it's often what's not said than what is said, really.
Yeah, I get that from you from the perspective of the definitely you seem to have this sense of knowing what people need.
Yeah,
Yeah, you seem to pick up on that. You've got that intuitiveness. From
yeah,
a person that comes to you for coaching, because often people, from my experience, don't think it through this way when they're looking for it as to, and I take this from my own experience that, I was shocking. I knew everything and wouldn't listen to anybody when I was younger. I was terrible. The problem was that I was very good as well. So, but it gets to a point where it runs out, and all of a sudden the world catches up. Um,
yeah.
and if you're not used to listening, it's difficult to make those changes. And I'm just wondering, how does someone that comes to you for help know that it's actually more in them listening as opposed and really listening? Because there's a difference between hearing and listening.
Yeah. Well, normally that's why I focus a lot on people's bodies, is because
Mm,
normally it's the body that's going to tell you what's going on.
yeah,
So normally it's your body, something in your body that it feels off and you can't put your finger on it. And it's listening to that is the start of the process, really, because when you start to, people can be unhappy for the whole entire lifetimes, and it
mm,
never changes,
yeah,
and it becomes just the way things are. But when your body changes and something
mm,
is not feeling right, it's often a signal. It's often the thing that's pushing you to do something.
yeah,
That's like the kind of wake up of, come on, life is not supposed to be like this. And that's normally the trigger to, I would say, to think differently. It's like they signal your body, your body's sending to your brain to say, I need help. Because we work in partnership, don't we? Our bodies and minds and thoughts and actions.
yeah,
Without our bodies, we don't exist. We haven't yet mastered how to just be a mind
yes,
without a body. So our bodies are really important. If we don't listen to our bodies, our energy levels, our stamina, our digestion, headaches, generally feeling really tired. If you ignore all that,
mm,
then it's not a good sign. But if you get all that and think, you know what, this is a sign that I've got to change something. What do I change? And that's where I would swoop in and say, okay, and I look at someone's life and what they eat, how healthy they are, and I could probably answer why they're feeling like they're feeling in about half an hour.
yeah.
It's all connected. So that's the listening bit, very deep listening, because when you listen to your body, you've got to really tune in, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you're mentioning there too is, a lot of people seem to need to have this life-changing experience before they actually start to listen. But, you
Mm.
know, can you listen earlier and because you're talking about listening to your body and noticing these things. So I think if I'm not wrong, if you thought back through your life, your body was giving signals and it sounds like that,
Mm.
and you ignored it and just kept pushing forward until
Yeah,
you wore out. How
yeah.
what do you think if you were to go back now, how would you give yourself an alert? Like, I'm just thinking for other people that might be going through that and going, "Well, what can we do to trigger that before they go through that
Yeah,
breakdown?"
yeah,
Is
yeah.
there anything
Well, yeah, absolutely. I was drinking too much, far
Yeah.
too much. I was working in a very male environment and was trying to keep up. I was working far too much and was practically at burnout
Mm,
stage. That in itself should have been my signal for to change. I went through a phase of getting terrible migraines.
mm,
Didn't stop me. That was a definite.
yeah,
You've got to see you need help now.
yeah,
Alert. I mean, I guess actually, when you also go to the doctors, the doctor doesn't say, the doctor just gives you a pill to get rid of the pain. They
mm,
don't try to get to the source of the problem. I think what I'm trying to say is, I want to get to the source of the problem to stop the pain.
mm,
And I think that's because we're so connected with our happiness levels and self belief and self love and how our body is that how our body functions. That if the doctor could stop and say, you need to go and speak to somebody first before I can give
yeah,
you a pill, it might get
yeah,
to the place of fixing the problem. But actually, repetitive migraines are a classic for so many people. Yeah, we
yeah,
just take painkillers.
yeah,
It just numbs the pain. It doesn't fix the problem. So
mm,
yeah, for me, I was drinking too much. Red flag straight away.
yeah,
I used to smoke intermittently. Red flag.
yeah,
um Burnout, really bad sleep, really bad sleep, another
mm,
red flag. Migraines, red flag.
Yeah. Yeah, so
quite a lot going
paying
on there.
attention to those kind of and I can relate because I've been similar sort of thing as well. And those are huge red flags, and
Yeah.
it's just whether we pay attention to them or not. The other thing,
Also arguing with people, like sort of anger outbursts. They're a red flag, or a really bad frustration or irritability.
Yeah,
those are all red flags as well.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't laughing at you then. I was just remembering my own. I think I was probably one of the most argumentative people when I was younger. I remember it was a partner at the time. Her brother was getting married. Brother was getting married, and they had a space where the bridal car was going to pull up, and someone went and parked there, and they didn't know this is where the bridal car. I went up and abused this guy and said, "What the hell are you parking there? Where's the bride going to park?"
That's a red flag.
So, and I'm just wondering how and I guess having these discussions as well, talking about it and people listening about it going, oh, actually, that is a red flag. This is not normal. This is, to me, it's now I look at it and, I wouldn't even contemplate going to any of those behaviors because it's just not normal to go there in a healthy person, I would say.
Yeah, and there's other things as well. Isn't there? There's a sort of feeling rejected and jealous all the time, and there are other red flags. Of sort of not achieving what you think you should be achieving is another one. So you say if in a work environment you go for a job, you don't get it, but someone else gets it and you can't believe they've got it, should have been you. That's a red flag because it's like, well, there's something not right here and you're not accepting it about yourself and how you can change that. So it's that kind of listening to yourself that's really very deep, and it's all connected with your own self-belief, your own self-worth.
Yeah, that's interesting because it is all and that's your background or where you focus on is this self-belief and self-worth, and when you have that, you don't need to look externally, and you can also give yourself a break. I mean, I do that with myself. There's days where I've got stuff planned that I want to get done, and because I've been going hard, I'm not in the mood or I need the break, and that's where my Lego comes in because I'll just spend the day building Lego. And that's okay. I don't beat myself up for doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this week, I on I can't remember what day, but I was really, really, really tired. The old me would have just carried on going, regardless of whether I was really up to the job or not. This time I did what I needed to do. I finished, I did I didn't let anyone down. Then I just stopped and just absolutely stopped and sort of gave myself the opportunity to refuel and to get, and that's really key for me now. Whether I don't know whether I'm more tired because of what I've been through, but with physically or not. But I have got to give myself time every now and again to recuperate, whereas I never used to do that before, ever in a million years. So it's all these things about being a human being and understanding that we can change whatever we want to change. We've just got to change how we think about it.
Yeah, definitely. And what about too, because I mean, obviously you were fairly driven and achieved a lot. Because one of the things I think about, and this comes from my corporate days as well. When I first started working in corporate, I was in the military first, and then did some other things, went mines, and then a bit of real estate. Fluffed around a bit and did things, and then I studied commerce, and then I worked in a corporate environment. And I remember shortly after working there, I was in there for about 5 months, and someone come up to me and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You're not working very much." And I was like, "But everything goes in my in tray. I'm emptying it straight away." Was what I'm thinking. I'm getting, as soon as it goes in my in tray, I deal with it and get it done. And then as I was thinking that, they turned to me and said, "Because you're not doing much. There's nothing in your in tray." And I was like, and the light bulb went off. So I just grabbed a ream of paper.
Yes, kept it in there.
Put it in the in tray. But where I'm going with that is because what I also do is I collect little snippets from movies and TV shows that stand out as motivations. And one of the ones that stood out for me was from Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Alec Baldwin. And he asks Alec Baldwin, he says, who has, achieved the most? And these shows are scripted, so it's a question that they've planned. And Alec Baldwin turns and says, well, I think you've achieved much more but worked less. And I just wonder about that when we think about, because we always talk about work smarter, not harder. But when we do it in real life, how many of us actually really focus on, working smarter in what we do, or do we try and fill our time with being busy to then justify that time?
Well, it depends on. I think from being in the corporate world for 20 years, you had to look busy unless you got criticised. So you kind of that flows.
Full intro.
Yeah. That flows into your personal life. You have to feel like you look busy all the time when you're not. Yeah. I'll never forget when I was training some people for a new menu launch or something. I had an assistant manager and we were training together. And at the end of the menu cook-off, this is like way back when, he said, I will now show you how to look busy when you're really not. And I was absolutely horrified with him. And he showed me how to look busy. And he wasn't doing anything. It was so funny.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me so much. I thought, that's what we're all doing, to looking busy. We're all busy fools. I don't buy into it anymore. I believe that we do more work in less time all the time. We just have fluff around the edges, which is to maybe pad out our egos or to make it feel like we're doing more. I don't know what it is, but I don't like it. I'm a big person. Like just simple things like my daughter with her revision. She said, I've been revising for 5 hours, and says, you haven't. You've been watching Netflix, the two of them, because I can hear you. So don't do that. It's not a badge of honor. It's not a badge of honor is say, I've been revising for an hour and I know exactly what I'm doing and I'm going to do really well. That I like, but not, oh, look at me, I've been revising for 5 hours when I know she hasn't.
Yes.
So it's not very competitive, isn't it? Look at me, I'm doing all this stuff. I work so hard. I work 50 hours a day, 20 hours a day. And when people say that to me, I think you're lacking some serious self-belief there.
Yeah. And that's where you've hit that nail, or for me, you've hit that nail on the head, because part of one of the programs I have that I do with corporates called Exceptional Effort, there's a time management component of that.
Yeah.
And that will revolutionize the way people use their time. But the biggest thing that I noticed about that, and because I use it myself as well, that it's amazing how much your self-belief and self-worth change. And I see it in the people that start doing this, and they go, oh my God, I got so much done and I feel really good.
Yeah.
I didn't.
It's amazing.
And I just wonder how, from that perspective of making this busy time, how bad that is for our own self-belief and self-worth when we feel that we've got to be busy and we know we're not really so we're lying to ourselves. And how bad
we lie to ourselves. We as human beings lie to ourselves a lot. And that's another red flag, is when you feel like you're tricking yourself, you're quitting on yourself. The only person you're lying to is yourself, nobody else really.
Yeah.
And that's another massive red flag, is when you really feel like you're hiding parts of yourself from yourself.
Yeah.
Or you're tricking yourself. That's a real sign for change.
Yeah, definitely. So with the work that you do, let's shift into that. Do you have a set pattern for how you work with people, or do you, is there programs that they come to do, or is it just one-on-one where you take an assessment and work out what they need, and is it personalized like that? To tell us a bit about your program.
Yeah, so I do two things. So I work privately one-on-one, and that's I have my 4 pillars. I quite like the word pillars. I haven't used it before. 4 pillars. So I'm going to nick that.
I won't charge you for it.
My 4 pillars, which are really important for me. Those are the things that we will focus on. But how we get to those things is very unique to the person I'm working with, because no one's the same and everyone's stories are different. And some people might need more attention in one area than another. So I'm not a fan of cookie cutter style programs, because I just don't think they can work. So I heavily focus on those 4 areas. Of course, other stuff comes in, because it always does, life. But I tend to, we start with you're here to do because you want to do this. I tend to work on 6-month blocks, because by the end of it, then I really believe that person is absolutely raring to go. I'm really proud of my no need to return policy, because I don't think anyone should need to come back. They might want to do something else with me, but I don't ever want them to need to. So I'll get in place.
I mean, to me, that seems to be that shows that you're actually a really good coach, because you've actually helped them move on so they can fish themselves.
Absolutely. I'm not like the majority of, I'm not like some industry coaches where they want repeat business all the time, because that would mean I've not done my job properly. So I want them to go. And often I'll work with people in different ways, and it might be collaboration, or it might be something, but I want to be cheering someone on from the sidelines who I've coached, not coaching them for the rest of their lives. That's a very personalised, very, very sort of full on, your life will transform in that 6 months. And then I also do a mastermind, which is really focused on people who want to start a business, be better in their business, or do better in their career. And it's a small mastermind with only 10 people, which runs once a year. And why I work with those people, I am a business coach, but actually we don't really talk about business. This isn't this is how you do branding, this is how you do personal branding, this is how you do funnels or SEO. This is about who are you as in your business, and how you become the CEO of your business or your career. And it's all about personal belief, and that's how I work.
That sounds like a real foundation and I know when I've worked with businesses before, it has been about, who are you and what it is, because all the other stuff is, yes, you need to do it, but if you haven't got that foundation right,
then you can't. You can teach. The thing is about business, you can teach business to anybody. Anybody can learn how to be in business, but actually, can everyone be in business? No, because they haven't got the belief system behind them. But if you give them the belief system, then they can be in business. It's just a real simple shift.
And when you work with people, is it solely on business, or is it solely personal, or do you combine the two?
I always combine everything, because I don't believe you can do one without the other. So everything, we aren't just business people or mothers, wives, husbands, friends, brothers, sisters, whatever. We are everything, aren't we? I'm Alex. I have my own business. I'm also a mother, a wife, a friend, a runner. I can't cook, but I'm trying to learn, kind of person. So there's all these things that I do in my life. I can't possibly just focus on one, because my business will be influenced about how I feel about myself and my life and my belief system. If my belief system is shot, it's shot everywhere. It's not just shot in one place. So way back when we first started talking, and I was Miss Degree-tastic, because I knew that a qualification made me feel I was getting something. Actually, I had no belief system. And I was in business. I was in business doing all right, but I wasn't ever going to be wholly all right in that situation, because I was out of alignment. So when I coach about everything. And if somebody wants a straight business coach, I'm not the coach for them. And if someone wants a straight life coach, I'm not the coach for them. I believe we are everything.
Because the principles are the same, really, whether personal or for business. The principles, if you want finances in your personal life, the same principles apply in a business.
Of course, no, actually, also losing weight. I mean, I have loads of clients who come and they end up losing weight because of the whole body focus is so significant that it's a why have I not seen that I can lose weight without going on any diets before? This is a mindset shift and a half. It's that's why it's got everything in, and that's really important to me, because I am personally a combination of health, life, and business, because that's what my life has been.
And like you say, if you're much healthier, you're going to perform better in your business, and your focus is going to be better, all those kind of things. And you've got a podcast coming out soon too, I understand. Do you want to tell us about that?
So it's launching in January, and it's just I love talking.
So that's when this will go to air as well. So you'll be
great. Perfect. So January, I'm trying to work out January or February whether we try and miss the New Year's resolution months.
Just skip the resolutions. Let's just get straight down to business. That's your personality. It's straight there.
I know it is. So I want to have people on who want to talk about aspects of life that they feel have been significant and how people can learn from it. So I really want to give as much value as I can to anybody who listens, so they can after every episode they can go off and do something.
Yeah,
they can make a change. I really love practical solutions to complicated problems, and sometimes it's just a matter of going to drink more water. And I'll often say to someone, "Have you drunk enough water?" And they look at me and say, "What do you mean?" So how much water?
I've run out.
There you go. How much water do you drink in a day? Well, I drink about 2 glasses. So you've got to drink about 8. Just do it. And then a month later, I feel completely different because I drink more water. So it is all these tiny things that I want to be able to talk about of the reason why it makes a difference. So why drinking water is so crucial to our cognitive function, that actually if you don't drink water, then you're going to really struggle with your clarity of focus sometimes. And it's why, and it's that kind of thing. I mean, I talk about love, life, health, and everything in between.
Love that.
Business.
That's going to be awesome. I can't wait for that. It's going to be great. If people are going to reach
you on mine.
feel free. I'd love to do that. I don't often be a guest on a podcast, but I'd love to be part of having further discussions with you. It'd be awesome.
Brilliant, thank you.
If people are going to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach them? We'll put in the show notes, but
so they can reach me. They can DM me on Instagram, or they can just directly email me, or via my website onto the contact. So I'm very contactable.
Fantastic, easy that. So go to your website, or
you can see my website. You can schedule a call straight onto my. You go to the website. You can schedule a call. So if someone wants to actually speak to me, you can schedule a free call. If anybody's ever interested in working with me, I want to spend a good hour, 2 hours with them first, just to get to know them and see whether we connect, whether I can help or not. And I'm very, very, very transparent and very honest. If I don't believe I'm the person for them, I'll say.
Yeah.
So. Or if I think they need to go and do something else first, I'll say. So it's that people can go straight into my calendar and book that in, or just email me, and I'm very responsive.
Yeah, I know that, and you're very understanding too. So, Alex, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Before we go, if you were going to leave our audience with key wisdom or wisdoms, what would they be?
It would all be about love. Love is actually everything. And it would be, if somebody just thinks that's just rubbish, I would challenge that person and say, actually, until you feel absolutely for yourself, or ask yourself, how much do you love yourself enough that you will bank on yourself, you'll back yourself, you will go all in on yourself with anything that you ever decide? If the answer is yes, then you're there. If the answer is absolutely, I don't think I can, then I really would urge someone to say, well, okay, why? What's missing for you to not back yourself with your decisions that you're making? And that will change everything. It's a shift that changes pretty well overnight.
Wow, that's
my
sage
biggest piece of advice.
That's sage advice. Say back yourself. That's
yes.
Back yourself with love.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Alex, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you very much.
So many wonderful things. I hope we can get together again and have another chat. But yeah, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you. Very, very, I've loved it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes, for others and for you.